I know you guys watch these videos to relax or at bedtime, so before starting I would like you guys to subscribe the channel and let me know in the comments down below from where and at what time you are watching this video. Let's begin. I found a door in my basement that wasn't there before. It started when I came back from a weekend trip. Everything seemed normal at first. The house was quiet, no signs of a break-in. But something felt different. Not wrong exactly, just off, like the air had shifted slightly in my absence. I went downstairs to check the basement. That's where I store tools, old furniture, and boxes of junk I swear I'll organize someday. The light bulb flickered when I pulled the chain. Typical. Then I saw it. A door. At the far wall beyond the water heater. Wooden. Chipped paint. A black iron handle rusted at the edges. I froze, because that door hadn't been there before. I've lived in this house for 6 years. I know every square inch of it. That wall had always been solid concrete. But now a door. I walked up to it slowly, put my ear to the wood. Nothing. I reached for the handle, then stopped. Something about it felt wrong. Not dangerous exactly, just wrong. I left it alone. That night I barely slept. I kept thinking about the door, dreamt of knocking, of whispers behind it, of something pressing its palm against the wood from the other side. When I went down the next morning, the door was gone, just smooth concrete, as if it had never existed. I would have thought I imagined it if not for the muddy footprints on the basement floor. Small, barefoot, leading from where the door had been, straight to the stairs. I told myself it had to be a prank. Maybe a squatter. Maybe a sleepwalking episode one didn't remember. I tried to forget it. It stayed gone for a week. Then it came back. Same spot. Same door. Only this time it was open. Just a crack. Not enough to see inside. Only enough to see that it was dark. Darker than it should have been. I shut it and locked the basement door. That night I heard something moving downstairs. Thump. Drag. Thump. A long pause. Then the doorknob upstairs jiggled. The basement one. I held my breath. It stopped. In the morning, I found the basement door wide open again. The strange door was gone, but something was different. On the wall where it used to be, scratched into the paint, were words. You saw it. That's enough. I moved out the next week. Rented a small apartment across town. The kind with too much traffic and too little silence. I figured maybe noise would help me forget. But 2 nights ago, I heard something in the hallway. A familiar sound. Thump. Drag. Thump. I checked the front door. Nothing there. But when I turned around, the coat closet door was slightly ajar. And I swear I hadn't opened it. Inside was a new door. Wooden. Chipped paint. Black iron handle. I haven't opened it yet. I don't think I need to. Because last night I heard someone whisper my name through the keyhole. And when I looked down this morning, there were muddy footprints in the hallway. I stared at the footprints for what felt like hours. They were small, barefoot again, like a child's. The same ones from the basement. Only now they led across the hardwood floor, directly to my bedroom door. I didn't sleep that night. I left every light on, sat upright in bed with a flashlight in one hand and a knife in the other. Nothing happened. Until 3:13 a.m. That's when the closet door creaked open on its own. Just an inch. No wind. No draft. I approached it slowly, heart pounding in my throat. Shaking, I pulled it open. The wooden door inside was gone. But in its place, a staircase. Narrow, rotting with steps spiraling down into impossible darkness. I live on the 3rd floor. There shouldn't be stairs. I should have run, called someone, burned the place down. But something about the staircase pulled at me. Not like curiosity. It felt personal, as if something was waiting down there. Something that knew me. I stood at the top of the stairs and listened. Silence. Then a whisper, so faint it could have been my imagination. You left the first door open. I stepped down. The light from my room didn't reach far. My phone flashlight barely cut the darkness. The walls were close, damp, and pulsing faintly like they were breathing. After maybe 10 steps, I reached a landing. A corridor stretched ahead, lined with doors, all identical. Each one had a number carved into the wood. 30, 30, 13, over and over again. At the very end was one final door. It didn't have a number. It had a mirror. I approached slowly. My reflection flickered as I drew close, not mimicking me exactly. It blinked when I didn't, tilted its head, grinned. Then it opened its mouth and whispered, "You should have never seen us." The door opened. Behind it was a room identical to my old basement, but decayed, rotted, wrong. And something stepped forward. It looked like me, but twisted, eyes too wide, skin pale and wet, hands long and twitching. It mimicked my movements until I turned to run. Then it didn't. I sprinted back up the stairs, but the staircase was longer now, endless. The more I climbed, the darker it got. Whispers closed in around me, voices pleading, screaming, laughing. I finally burst through my closet, back into my apartment, gasping for air, light stabbing my eyes. The closet slammed shut behind me. The knob turned. Locked. I nailed it shut, taped every edge, moved a bookshelf in front of it. I haven't slept in days. Every night at 3:13 a.m. I hear footsteps behind the door. Scratching, knocking, breathing, and always the whisper. You left the first door open. Let's move on to the next one. The man in the orange jacket. It started when I moved into my new apartment. It was nothing fancy, just a second-floor unit in a tired, gray building on the edge of the city. Cheap, quiet, and close to work. I didn't ask many questions, but on the third night I saw him. A man standing across the street under the flickering streetlight, wearing an old, tattered orange jacket, facing my building, not moving, just watching. I figured he was a junkie or maybe homeless, a little rough but harmless. I closed the blinds and went to bed. The next night he was there again. Same spot, same jacket, same posture, still not moving. I watched him for a while, trying to make out his face, but the street light kept flickering. Every time the light blinked, his face seemed different. I shut the blinds tighter. The third night he was closer. Not across the street anymore, but on the sidewalk beneath my window. Still standing perfectly still. Still staring. I didn't sleep. I called the landlord in the morning, asked if anyone else had reported a man hanging around. He just sighed and said, "You saw him already? Thought we had more time." I asked what that meant, but he hung up. That night, the man in the orange jacket was standing right at the entrance to my building. I stayed up, lights on, phone in hand. Around 3 a.m. there was a knock at my door. 3 slow knocks. I didn't move, didn't breathe. No more knocks came. In the morning, nothing was there, but on my doormat was a note. In shaky handwriting it said, "Don't acknowledge him." I moved out that day. I didn't even pack. I booked a motel across town. Clean, bright, safe. Or so I thought. The second night, as I went to close the curtains, there he was, standing in the parking lot. Same orange jacket, same crooked posture. I started researching. Nothing came up. No myths, no urban legends, nothing in the news. But on a strange forum buried deep in the web, I found one thread. Has anyone else seen the man in the orange jacket? There were only a handful of replies. All vague, all disturbing. One post stood out. He appears when you move into a new place. You'll see him outside watching. If you ignore him, he'll leave. But if you look too long, if you think about him too much, he gets closer. If you ever speak to him, it's over. He can follow you anywhere, even inside. The final reply was just a photo of a dim hallway, and at the very end of it was a man in an orange jacket. I tried everything, therapy, meds, even staying with friends. But no matter where I went, he came too. Sometimes across the street, sometimes behind a fence. Once I saw him standing in the reflection of my bedroom mirror, but not in the room itself. He's never moved, never spoken, just stared. Until last night. I was sleeping on a friend's couch when I heard the floor creak. I sat up and there he was, inside, standing in the corner. So, silent. The orange jacket was torn at the shoulder now. His face blurred like smeared clay. Eyeless, smiling. He raised one hand and pointed at me. And for the first time he spoke. His voice was dry, hollow. But I'll never forget what he said. Now you see me. This morning I woke up on the floor. My friend was gone. Door wide open. No sign of a struggle, just gone. I turned on the TV to clear my head. Every channel, even the static, showed the same image. Him, standing in my old apartment doorway, smiling, waiting. I'm writing this from a public library. Every reflective surface shows him standing closer now, watching me. He knows I told you. If you see a man in an orange jacket, don't look too long. Don't acknowledge him. And whatever you do, don't answer the knock. Now he's in the library. Not physically, no one else seems to notice, but every time I glance at a screen, a window, the polished floor, there he is, closer than before. The orange jacket now soaked with something dark. His hand is raised again, finger outstretched like he's pointing through the reflection at you. I don't think he's just watching anymore. I think he's waiting for someone else to see him too. And if you do, it's already too late. Just now the fire alarm in the library went off. Everyone evacuated, but I stayed, frozen, watching the reflection in the security monitor near the exit. The camera showed the reading room behind me completely empty, except for one figure standing still between the shelves. The man in the orange jacket. Only now he wasn't just pointing. He was holding something in his other hand. A second jacket. Smaller, cleaner, my size. I backed away from the monitor, heart pounding, but every reflective surface around me, the glass doors, the turned-off screens, even a polished metal bookshelf, now showed the same image. Him holding that second jacket, his head tilted like he was listening. Then I heard it. Footsteps behind me. Not rushed. Not loud. Just deliberate. Measured. Like someone pacing slowly closer. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. Instead I ran. Burst out of the library into the street. But the world outside wasn't the same. Every face that passed me seemed slightly wrong, blurred eyes, crooked smiles. The reflections in windows showed people walking backward. One screen across the street glitched, then showed a news anchor with no mouth mouthing silent words. Before his jacket turned orange and he started to grin. I don't think I left the building. I think I stepped into his world now, and I'm not sure there's a way out. Let's move on to the next one. I never believed in ghosts or anything supernatural. I thought those were stories people told to explain the unexplainable, to fill the silence when tragedy struck. But 6 years ago, my entire world shattered. The day my sister Emily died in a car crash. A rain-drenched highway, a drunk driver swerving out of control, and in an instant she was gone. The funeral was somber, the casket closed, the faces of family and friends drained of color and hope. I never saw her body. Just a box of ashes, a few photos, and memories that kept slipping through my fingers like smoke. Emily was different from me. She was always drawn to the strange and forgotten. Antique shops filled with dust and secrets, occult books from library basements, old relics no one else cared about. Her apartment was a shrine to curiosities and shadows. Beneath her bed, hidden in the corner, was a small wooden box. Old and weathered, blackened with age and locked tight with a tarnished brass padlock. I remember once asking her what was inside. She smiled a secret smile and said only, "My secrets." After she died, when the house was emptied, I took the box home. I told myself it was just a keepsake, a reminder. But the truth was I never wanted to open it. I was afraid of what I might find. For years, it sat quietly in my closet, gathering dust, untouched and ignored. Then last week everything changed. It was exactly 2:48 a.m. when my phone buzzed. A new voicemail from an unknown number. No missed call, no text. Just that message waiting, silent and heavy in the digital space. I almost didn't listen. I should have ignored it, but I didn't. When I pressed play, the first sound was static, thick and wet like breathing through waterlogged cloth. Then, faint at first, came her voice. Emily's voice. Whispering, barely audible, "You shouldn't have moved the box." The line went dead. No goodbye kiss, just silence. My heart hammered in my chest. I sat frozen, the room cold and still. It had to be a prank, right? A cruel joke. But who? And why? The next day, I pulled the box from my closet. It was different. The wood felt damp and cold, sticky to the touch. The brass lock was broken in two. When I pried it open, the inside lining was shredded, like claws had ripped through it in desperation. Scratched across the wood was a single word, carved jagged and raw. Hungry. I dropped the box and stumbled back. A foul smell rose from it, earth, decay, rot. The room darkened, though the sun still shone outside my window. That night I noticed the photos. Every picture of Emily had changed. Her eyes were missing. Not scratched out. Not blurred. Gone. Empty, black hollows where her eyes should be. Shadowy figures lurked behind her in images I'd seen my whole life. Pale hands resting on her shoulders. Faces without features. I tried to convince myself it was a trick of my mind, exhaustion playing games. But every photo, every reflection, every memory was twisting. The next night, the phone rang again at 2:48 a.m. I let it go to voicemail. This time, the voice wasn't hers. What? Slurred. You let it out. Then came a sound, slow chewing, wet and sickening. I sat frozen, unable to move. The voicemails multiplied. I tried deleting them. They reappeared, copied, stacked. Like the thing was mocking me. Then the box vanished. My closet door scratched, torn. Long claw marks etched deep into the wood, trailing down the hallway. And that's when I saw her. Emily, or something wearing her face, standing in the corner of my room. Her porcelain skin cracked, lips torn wide in a grotesque smile, eyes hollow and endless. She didn't move, just watched. I blinked. Gone. I reached out to an old friend of hers. She told me Emily had been obsessed with an antique dealer from Oregon, a man who sold her the key to the beyond. She believed she was contacting something, a presence that promised knowledge beyond death. Her friend got a voicemail too. Same time, same voice, and then she disappeared. The reflections are worse now. Emily appears behind me on TV screens and windows and mirrors. Time freezes at 2:48 a.m. The voice whispers from the walls, "Let me back in." I don't know what I did, but I think I opened a door that never closes. If you find a secret locked away, don't open it. Don't listen, because once you do, it waits for you. Let's move on to the next one. When I first moved into the Victorian house on Maple Street, I was desperate. Cheap rent, quiet neighborhood, and a landlord who said the place had character. I didn't care much about creaky floors or peeling wallpaper. I just needed a roof over my head. But from the moment I stepped inside, I felt the weight of something heavy in the air, something cold that no heater could chase away. The house was old, that much was clear. Dark wood staircases, faded floral wallpaper, and the scent of dust and forgotten memories. The first night as I lay in bed, I heard faint whispering, so soft I thought it might be the wind. But the whispering didn't drift through the cracked window. It came from inside the walls. The next morning, I told myself it was just the house settling. Old houses do that, right? Days passed and the whispering didn't stop. Sometimes it was right outside my bedroom door, sometimes from the attic above. I avoided those places. But one afternoon, I wandered down the narrow hallway at the back of the house and saw it. A door half hidden behind a heavy red velvet curtain. It was smaller than the others, with ancient rusted hinges and a lock that looked like it hadn't been touched in 100 years. I tried the doorknob. It wouldn't budge. The keyhole was so old it looked like it belonged to another century. Curiosity gnawed at me. What was behind that door? That night, the whispers turned to voices. Not loud, but clear enough that I could make out a few words here and there. Words I didn't understand, like a language spoken only in nightmares. My dreams were filled with the room beyond that door. A small, cramped space with peeling wallpaper stained yellow by age, a cracked mirror hanging crooked on one wall, and shadows moving in ways shadows shouldn't. The next day, I scoured the house for a key, searching drawers, boxes, and even under floorboards. Nothing. Frustrated, I grabbed a crowbar and forced the door open. It creaked slowly, revealing a narrow room colder than the rest of the house. Inside was nothing but dust, a cracked mirror, and an overwhelming feeling of being watched. When I looked into the mirror, my reflection was strange. At first, it was just me, but then my image faded, replaced by a dark figure, twisted and distorted, grinning with eyes too wide to be human. I blinked, and the reflection was gone, replaced again by me, but I knew it was watching. From that moment, the house became a trap. Objects moved when I wasn't looking. Books fell off shelves, lights flickered, doors slammed shut behind me. The shadows in the mirror grew larger, reaching out as if desperate to escape the glass prison. I could hear them whispering secrets I didn't want to hear, promises of knowledge and doom. One evening, trying to escape, I stepped outside, but found myself back inside the house, standing before the forgotten door. The whispers called to me, soft and sweet, begging me to stay, to learn the truth buried in the walls. I don't know how long I've been trapped. Days, weeks. Time seems to lose meaning here. But I know one thing. This house has a story, and it isn't finished with me yet. I woke up drenched in sweat, heart pounding like a drum. The dream hadn't ended. No, it was more like the house was bleeding into my mind. The cracked mirror's distorted face was seared into my vision, those unnatural eyes staring through me even when I closed my own. I forced myself out of bed, the floorboards groaning underfoot, the cold air biting at my skin. I needed answers. Desperation led me to the attic. I'd avoided it until now, the one place in the house that felt heavier, like the very air held a secret. The narrow wooden stairs creaked as I climbed, each step a warning. At the top, the room was cloaked in shadows. Old trunks lined the walls, covered in decades of dust and cobwebs. I reached for one, pulling open its creaky lid. Inside were letters, yellowed and brittle, penned in a looping script I could barely read. One letter stood out. It spoke of a woman named Eliza, the house's original owner over a century ago. She wrote of the room behind the velvet curtain, a chamber she called the Watcher's Door. According to her, the mirror wasn't just glass, but a prison for something dark, something ancient. She begged whoever found the letters not to open the door, warning that the Watcher feeds on curiosity and traps the souls of the curious forever. My blood ran cold. I slammed the trunk shut. Suddenly, a soft whisper floated through the attic, a voice coaxing, calling my name. "Come see." I turned toward the sound, heart racing. Shadows danced on the walls, twisting and shifting. The air grew thick, the room colder than before. I fled down the stairs and into the hallway, the velvet curtain billowing as if pushed by an unseen force. The door stood slightly ajar. Against every instinct screaming in my mind, I stepped inside. The room was smaller than I imagined, barely big enough to stand in. The mirror hung crookedly, the glass cracked like a spider web. As I gazed into it, the reflection rippled, and suddenly I was no longer looking at myself. Instead, a figure appeared, twisted, pale, grinning with sharp teeth. It reached out, its fingers long and clawed, stretching through the glass. I stumbled back, heart pounding. The door slammed shut behind me. The whispers turned into screams. I was trapped. Let's move on to the next one. I never thought working night shifts in a small rural hospital would lead me into something out of a nightmare. The kind of nightmare that lingers long after the lights come on. My name's Mark, and I was the lone nurse on duty in the emergency wing one quiet autumn night when it all began. It was around 2:30 a.m. when the phone rang at the nurse's station. The hospital was empty. No patients admitted, no urgent calls expected. The ringing pierced the silence, startling me. I glanced at the caller ID. An unknown number. I hesitated but answered. A whisper came through. My name. "Mark, help me." The voice was faint, trembling, barely more than a breath. I told them they had the wrong number and hung up. I thought it was a prank. Maybe someone dialing random numbers to mess with the night staff. But the calls didn't stop. Night after night, at exactly 2:30 a.m., the phone would ring. The same unknown number. The same whispered plea. "Help me." I started to feel uneasy. The hospital had no patients admitted overnight. The wards were empty and silent. Yet the voice sounded so real, so desperate. Curiosity and growing dread led me to try tracing the number. It came back to an abandoned house on the edge of town, a place locals avoided. The Wilson House. Years ago, a fire had ripped through it, killing a family of 4. They said the youngest child, a girl named Lily, was never found. Her body was never recovered. Since then, the house stood empty, windows boarded, walls blackened by soot, a scar on the landscape. One night I drove past it on a whim. The streetlights cast long shadows, the house looming like a corpse beneath the moonlight. I swear I saw a faint flicker of light from an upstairs window and a figure, small, pale, standing by the broken front door. But when I blinked, it was gone. The calls continued, growing more urgent. The voice sounded weaker, desperate to be heard. "Please, don't leave me here." I tried to ignore it, tried to convince myself it was someone's cruel joke. But the feeling of eyes watching me never left. Then, 3 nights ago, the hospital pager buzzed suddenly, an emergency admission. The address? The Wilson house. My heart pounded as I grabbed my coat and headed out. When I arrived, the house was silent. Empty. No lights, no movement. But my phone buzzed. A voicemail. Heavy breathing. Then a sob, broken and raw. "Don't leave me here," whispered the voice. I couldn't tell if it was a child or a woman. I called out, but only silence answered. I left, but the feeling stayed with me, like something had followed me home. Now, every night, the phone rings at 2:30 a.m. I answer, and the voice pleads again. Sometimes I hear footsteps outside my window. Sometimes faint laughter. I don't know what's trapped in that house or why it's reaching out to me. But I'm afraid if I don't help, it'll come for me next. I couldn't ignore the calls anymore. Every night, the ringing pulled me back, a siren dragging me toward the Wilson house. I started researching its history, digging through old newspapers and police reports. The fire was mysterious, no official cause ever given, but rumors swirled about strange occurrences before the blaze. Neighbors claimed to hear screams, to see shadows moving behind the windows. I found a name, Margaret Wilson, the mother. After the fire, she disappeared without a trace. No body, no goodbye. Just gone. People whispered that the house was cursed, haunted by something hungry, something that never let go. One night, I drove back to the house, flashlight in hand. The air was thick, cold, heavy with decay. The front door, surprisingly, was ajar. I stepped inside. Inside, the smell of smoke and rot overwhelmed me. The floorboards creaked beneath my feet. The walls were charred and stained. As I moved deeper, I felt eyes on me watching. Then I heard it, a soft giggle, childlike and eerie, echoing from the upstairs bedroom. I climbed the stairs slowly, every nerve screaming to run. The room was empty, but the cracked mirror on the wall reflected something behind me. A little girl. Her face pale and tear-streaked, eyes hollow and desperate. She reached out her hand. I stumbled back and fled the house, the giggling chasing me into the night. Since then, the calls haven't stopped. The voice is more insistent, pleading for release. I don't know what's trapped in the Wilson house, but it's reaching out, pulling me in. And I fear if I don't answer, it will come for me. Let's move on to the next one. A year ago, my cousin sent me an old family photo from a reunion we had years back. We were all smiling, happy faces caught frozen in time. But when I looked closer, I noticed something odd, an unfamiliar shadowy figure standing behind my uncle. It wasn't there before, or at least I hadn't noticed it. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light or a smudge on the photo. But when I zoomed in, the shadow seemed to have shape, an outline of a tall man with no face, just darkness where features should be. Curious, I showed the photo to my family. No one admitted to seeing it before. My uncle denied anyone standing behind him. But soon after, strange things started happening. Lights flickered when the photo was nearby. Doors would slam shut on their own. At night, I felt like someone was watching me, a cold presence lurking just out of sight. I tried burning the photo. It wouldn't burn. The image stayed clear, the shadow untouched by flame. Then I started seeing the shadow in other places, reflected in windows, lurking at the edge of mirrors, even in my phone's camera when I took selfies alone. One night, I woke to find the shadow standing at the foot of my bed. It didn't move or speak, just watched. I don't know what it wants, but I'm scared it's attached to me now, and I don't think I can get rid of it. The day I noticed the shadow in the photo was the beginning of a slow unraveling. At first, I told myself it was just a trick of light or a defect in the old print. But every time I looked at that image, the shadow seemed to grow darker, more defined. It wasn't just an absence of light, it felt alive. Something watching, waiting. That evening, I placed the photo on my desk and tried to ignore it. But as night fell, the room grew colder. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I could hear faint whispers like breaths just beyond hearing. Shadows flickered along the walls, twisting unnaturally. I tried to cover the photo with a cloth. Still, the shadow seeped through, darker than the fabric, pulsating like a heartbeat. Sleep became impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that faceless figure standing behind my uncle in the photo, looming silent. One night, my phone camera captured something terrifying. I was taking a selfie, hoping to prove to myself nothing was wrong. But when I looked at the image, behind me was the shadow. Closer this time, fingers outstretched, reaching. I started to hear footsteps behind me when I was alone. Cold drafts brushed my skin. Doors creaked open slowly, revealing empty rooms. My family grew worried. They suggested therapy. But I knew this wasn't in my head. I researched the photo, tracing it back to a long-forgotten family reunion. The man in the shadow had no record, no name. Some relatives whispered about a family curse, a presence bound to watch and wait, feeding on fear. I tried to destroy the photo multiple times, burning, shredding, even throwing it into a lake. But it always returned. The shadow untouched, always there. Last night, I woke to the feeling of breath on my neck. I turned and saw nothing, but my phone's camera showed the shadow inches from my face. I don't know how long I have before it crosses over completely. And I don't know if anyone will hear my story when I'm gone. The presence grew stronger each day. I stopped leaving the photo out in the open, locking it in a drawer that I hoped would contain whatever darkness clung to it. But the shadow's influence seeped beyond the picture. My dreams twisted into nightmares of faceless figures reaching through walls, dragging me into endless voids where whispers never ceased. One evening, I found strange symbols scratched into the wood of my desk, deep, fresh gouges that hadn't been there before. They resembled something ancient, arcane, and filled me with a chilling dread. I tried to research them, but the books and websites I consulted only hinted at forgotten rituals meant to trap spirits or bind entities to our world. That same night, the power went out. My house plunged into darkness, and in the pitch black, I felt breath against my skin, slow and deliberate. I forced myself to turn on my phone flashlight, trembling, only to see the shadow standing silently in the corner of my room, taller, more defined, its featureless face pressing the void like a mask. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The shadow raised a hand, no fingers, just darkness, and pointed at me. I blinked and it vanished. From that moment, I knew the shadow was no longer content to simply watch. It wanted me. I called my cousin, the one who'd sent me the photo. I begged for answers. She confessed the photo was taken at a cabin deep in the woods, a place her family had visited only that once. She mentioned rumors of a man who disappeared there decades ago, a man rumored to have dabbled in dark arts, bound to the land by a curse. I knew then what I had to do. I needed to return to that cabin, to confront whatever evil had followed that photo into my life. But even writing this, I feel the shadow lurking just beyond my vision, waiting, watching, and I don't know if I'll ever see daylight again. Let's move on to the next one. I never thought the apartment next door would become the source of my nightmares. It was always empty, the windows dark, and the hallways silent. I asked the landlord once about it, but he just shrugged and said, "No one's lived there in years." One night, I heard faint music coming from that empty apartment. A slow, haunting melody like a music box playing in reverse. I pressed my ear against the wall. It stopped. Curiosity got the better of me. I knocked on the door. No answer. I tried again the next night. Still nothing. Then the noises started. Soft footsteps pacing behind the walls. Whispered voices I couldn't understand. Doors creaking open and slammed shut. One morning I found a note slipped under my door. It said, "Help me." No signature. No explanation. I told my friends, but no one believed me. They said I was imagining things, but I wasn't. One night, I saw a shadow move across the cracked window of the apartment. It didn't look human. Tall, thin, and impossibly dark. I tried calling the police, but when they arrived, the apartment was empty. No signs of anyone ever living there. Now the noises follow me everywhere. At home, at work, even in my dreams. And sometimes when I look out my window at night, I see the silhouette standing in the apartment next door, watching. After that first note, I became obsessed with the apartment next door. Every creak, every whisper, every flicker of shadow drew me in like a moth to a flame I couldn't resist. The landlord refused to discuss the unit beyond his vague "no one's lived there in years" line, but I wasn't convinced. There had to be something more. One night I stayed up late, pressing my ear to the wall, hoping to catch the faintest sound. The haunting melody returned, that backwards music box tune, slow and warped, filling the silence with an unsettling air. Then a cold draft blew through the hallway, even though the windows were shut tight. I shivered. Suddenly the music stopped. The silence was shattered by soft, deliberate footsteps pacing just beyond the wall. They circled slowly, as if whatever was inside was trapped in its own endless loop. I knocked on the door again, louder this time. A soft thud came from within, like something heavy falling. Then a voice, barely more than a rasp, whispered, "Please?" I stumbled back, heart racing. The next day, I told my friend Jess what was happening. She's practical, never believing in anything supernatural. But when I played her the recording I secretly captured, the music box, the footsteps, the whispers, her face went pale. "Mark," she said slowly, "this is beyond us." That night, the haunting grew worse. The whispers became clearer, pleading for release. Doors around my apartment rattled. Lights flickered. The silhouette I'd seen in the window now appeared at the edge of my vision, vanishing whenever I looked directly. I started seeing scratches on my door frame, tall, thin marks like claws. No explanation. Desperate, I decided to investigate the building's records. The apartment was registered to a woman named Eleanor Gray, who disappeared nearly 20 years ago. Neighbors claimed to hear music and cries coming from the unit before she vanished without a trace. I knew then that whatever haunted the apartment was connected to Eleanor, trapped, forgotten, and reaching out. One evening, I knocked on the landlord's office door, demanding answers. He hesitated, then sighed. Eleanor was troubled, he said quietly. After she disappeared, I sealed the apartment. The place has been off limits. Strange things happen there. That night, I swore the music box melody seeped through my walls, wrapping me in a cold embrace. The whispers promised one thing: freedom. But at what cost? Now I'm caught between fear and obsession. The apartment next door isn't empty anymore. It's alive, waiting, and I don't know if I'm the next to disappear. The music never stopped after that night. It seeped into every corner of my life, like a poison I couldn't escape. I'd hear it beneath the hum of my fridge, faint but unmistakable, winding its way through the silence of my apartment. The whispers grew more urgent, a chorus of voices begging, pleading, some full of sorrow, others laced with rage. I tried to block it out, but the sound clawed at my sanity. I started seeing her, the woman named Eleanor, everywhere. At first, just glimpses in the corner of my eye, a pale figure in a tattered dress disappearing down the hallway. Then one night, she appeared fully in the flickering light of my bathroom mirror. Her eyes were hollow, dark voids that seemed to pull me in, and her mouth opened in a silent scream. Terrified, I slammed the bathroom door shut and leaned against it, heart racing. The next morning, I found scratch marks on the door, long and deep, as if something had been trying desperately to get out or in. I realized then that Eleanor wasn't just haunting the apartment next door. She was crossing over, trying to reach me. I wanted to leave. I packed my bags, ready to escape the building, the city, even my own life if it meant freedom. But the apartment refused to let me go. Doors slammed shut behind me, the elevator buttons blinked erratically, trapping me on floors I didn't want to be. Shadows stretched longer, and the air grew heavy with something ancient and malevolent. One night the whispers stopped. Silence settled like a shroud. Then a single knock came at my door. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. I opened it. No one was there. But on the floor lay a small, ornate music box. The haunting melody played. Let's move on to the next one. I worked the night shift at a downtown office building, and the elevator is the only way to reach the 14th floor where my office is. One night, after a long shift, I stepped into the elevator alone. As the doors closed, I noticed something strange in the mirrored panel inside. My reflection was delayed, lagging behind my movements by a few seconds. At first, I thought I was imagining it, maybe tired or stressed. But the delay grew longer. My reflection started smiling when I wasn't. It blinked when my eyes were closed. Looked wrong. I tried to step out at the 7th floor, but the elevator wouldn't stop. The buttons blinked erratically and the light flickered. The mirrored panel darkened, then showed a corridor instead of my reflection. A shadowy figure stood at the end, staring directly at me. Panic set in. I pressed every button. Nothing worked. The elevator began to descend, but not to any floor I recognized. Instead, it felt like I was sinking into darkness. The reflection reached out, its hand pressing against the glass as if trying to escape. The elevator doors opened into a void, endless blackness with a faint whisper, "Come in." I never stepped out. Now the building is abandoned, but sometimes at night, people say they hear the elevator music playing softly, and if you look into the darkened elevator mirror, you might see someone trapped behind it, waiting. After that night, I couldn't stop thinking about the elevator. The building felt different, colder, almost alive. I avoided the elevator for days, taking the stairs instead, even though the 14 floors left me breathless. But curiosity gnawed at me. I needed to understand what had happened. One evening, I returned to the building after hours, alone. The lobby was dim, the only light coming from the emergency exit signs flickering overhead. The elevator doors slid open smoothly as if inviting me inside. I stepped in. The mirrored panel gleamed, but the reflection was perfect. No lag, no delay. I pressed the button for the 14th floor. The doors closed and the elevator started moving, but instead of the usual hum, I heard faint voices whispering from the walls, echoes of conversations long past. The reflection began to distort again. My face stretched, eyes blackened, mouth twisting into a grin that wasn't mine. Suddenly, the elevator jolted to a stop between floors. The lights flickered out, plunging me into darkness. In the pitch black, I felt cold fingers brush my arm. When the lights returned, my reflection was gone. In its place was the shadowy figure from before, smiling, beckoning. The elevator doors opened not to a floor, but to a narrow corridor lined with mirrors, each reflecting different versions of me, some twisted, others crying out silently. I took a step forward, but the doors slammed shut behind me. Now I'm trapped in that endless corridor, chased by reflections that want to replace me. If you ever hear the elevator music playing late at night in that building, don't look into the mirrors, because they might just be looking back. The corridor stretched on infinitely, each mirror reflecting not just me but twisted versions of myself. Some screaming silently, others with hollow eyes that followed my every move. The air was thick with cold dread, and every step echoed endlessly as if the space itself was alive, watching. I tried to turn back, but the door I had entered through vanished. Panic clawed at my chest as I realized I was trapped inside this mirrored prison. One mirror caught my eye, a reflection that looked like me but older, eyes weary and resigned. It mouthed the words, "Find the key." Desperate, I touched the glass, but it was ice cold. Then the reflections around me began to shift, some reaching out with shadowy hands. I dodged, heart pounding, realizing these were not mere reflections but trapped souls, prisoners like me. I followed the whispers, which led me to a mirror different from the rest. It was cracked, and behind the cracks shimmered a faint light. With trembling hands, I pushed against it, and the glass gave way, revealing a small hidden room. Inside lay an old ornate key on a dusty pedestal, glowing faintly. As I reached for it, the shadows lunged, their voices a cacophony pleading and threatening. Grabbing the key, I sprinted back into the corridor. The reflections screamed and shattered as I ran, the path twisting and warping with every step. At last, I reached a massive mirror that pulsed with dark energy, the exit. I slid the key into a hidden lock on its frame. The mirror rippled and dissolved like water, revealing the elevator doors. I stepped through and the doors closed behind me. The elevator shuddered and ascended, returning me to the lobby. When the doors opened, I was alone, or so I thought. Behind me, the mirrors flickered, and in one I saw the shadowy figure standing, smiling. Let's move on to the next one. I was driving cross-country when I got caught in a sudden storm. The rain hammered the windshield, visibility dropping to almost nothing. I pulled into the nearest motel, a grimy place that looked like it hadn't been cleaned in years. The neon sign flickered erratically, casting an eerie glow on the empty parking lot. The receptionist was an old man with hollow eyes who barely spoke. He handed me a key to room 13 without a word. The moment I stepped inside, the door slammed shut behind me. The room was cold, and the air smelled like mildew and something else, something metallic. I tried to turn on the lights, but only one bulb flickered weakly. On the nightstand was an old photograph of the motel, but the people in it were scratched out, faces marred beyond recognition. That night, I heard whispers coming from the bathroom. I opened the door, and the tiles were stained with something dark and sticky, glistening under the weak light. I tried to leave, but the door wouldn't budge. The key was missing from the lock. Panic set in as the whispers grew louder, turning into screams that echoed through the walls. Then I saw it. Reflected in the cracked bathroom mirror was a figure standing behind me. Pale, with eyes black as coal and a smile stretched far too wide. I spun around. Nothing. I'm still trapped in room 13, and the night is far from over. The night in room 13 stretched on endlessly, each minute slower than the last. The whispers that had begun softly in the bathroom grew into chilling voices that echoed through the cracked walls, telling stories I didn't want to hear, tales of past guests who never left, trapped forever by something malevolent. I tried the window, but it was nailed shut from the outside. The keyhole stared back at me, empty and mocking. I pounded on the door, screaming until my voice cracked, but the motel stayed silent, indifferent to my terror. The air grew colder, my breath visible in the dim light. Shadows danced along the peeling wallpaper, twisting into shapes that resembled those scratched-out faces from the old photograph. I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming from the hallway outside. But when I called out, the only response was a low, guttural laugh that seemed to come from inside the walls themselves. In a desperate bid, I turned to the bathroom mirror, hoping to confront whatever was haunting me. The figure was still there, closer now. Its eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and its smile seemed to stretch impossibly wide, as if it fed on my fear. I touched the mirror, and the glass rippled like water. A cold hand shot out, grabbing my wrist with a grip like iron. I yanked free, stumbling back, heart pounding. The door to room 13 creaked open just a crack, revealing a dark corridor that wasn't there before. The voices whispered, "Come, join us." I don't know what waits down that hall, but I can't stay here. The room is alive, hungry, and the night is far from over. The door creaked open wider, revealing a narrow hallway shrouded in darkness. The faint glow of flickering lights barely illuminated the peeling wallpaper and cracked floorboards. The whispers grew louder, a chorus of voices beckoning me forward. My heart hammered in my chest as I took a tentative step into the corridor. The air was thick and cold, each breath I took forming a mist in the stale atmosphere. The walls seemed to close in around me, and every shadow flickered as if alive. I glanced behind me. The door to room 13 had slammed shut with a deafening bang, trapping me inside this nightmare. As I moved forward, I noticed doors lining the hallway, each marked with a faded number. I tried opening one, but it was locked tight. Suddenly, a chill ran down my spine as the voices transformed into anguished cries, echoing from behind the walls themselves. Then I saw it, a figure standing at the far end of the hall, pale and translucent, eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. It raised a hand, beckoning me closer with a crooked finger. My legs felt heavy, but I forced myself to move forward. As I approached, the figure's face twisted into a horrifying grin, revealing rows of sharp, jagged teeth. Before I could react, the walls around me began to bleed a dark, thick liquid. The floor trembled, and the corridor stretched endlessly, swallowing me in darkness. I screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the void. Now, trapped in the last room of the motel, I realized the truth. This place is a prison for lost souls, and I've just become one of them.